crunch, bring it back, single leg sweep. Let me teach you how to wrestle. Okay, let me teach you how to wrestle.
Okay, we're here today with the great Dr. Jack Kruse, respected neurosurgeon, CEO of Optimized Life. Got his book right here, Epipaleo RX. And really, first of all, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it, Dr. Kruse.
Hey, no problem. Anytime.
I first learned about you a few years ago. Flow Wrestling is the major wrestling platform in United States wrestling. And Kyle Dake, one of the best wrestlers, four-time world champ. He's a favorite to win the Olympics. He was behind this guy for a very long time, best American wrestler ever, Jordan Burroughs. And then we started seeing he started adopting some decentralized medicine practices, I guess, so to speak. Started talking about light water magnetism, said he's a big fan of Dr. Jack Kruse. I said, I got to look into this. So, you know, a lot of our audience, they're very concerned with performance success, right? How do I win matches? And that's, I'm sure, what originally brought Kyle Dake to you. But obviously, it goes far beyond performance success. It's living a healthy life. So I guess let's start there.
It's kind of interesting when we talk about this, because technically when people hire me and come to see me, it's usually for, you know, diseases when they go see the centralized clinicians and they don't get an answer. You know, like let's take a simple one that's in current events now. Like people get the jab and they have complications from the jab. Centralized medicine doesn't have an answer, you know, for those people. And now there are other answers. That's to improve their performance so they can do their jobs, so they can, you know, do things they want to do with their family. But when it comes to athletes actually really need to understand something. Look at your opponent like Sun Tzu would say, and realize that the environment that they're in actually is a detriment. In other words, do not let them optimize their environment. Let them believe that working out in the blue lit gym is actually the thing to do. And this will be very counterintuitive, I think, probably for the wrestling people to hear, because if you can just take your training routine, I don't care what you're doing, and you just put it outside, that is the edge that you're looking for. And I said something to you before we hit the record button that you kind of chuckled and said, yeah, I think we need to talk about this. You know, this may be a dirty word, you know, for athletes, but when you optimize light water magnetism, you're actually performing legalized blood doping. And people don't realize that your red cell mass actually is improved by sunlight. That's why people who have anemia of chronic disease or, you know, acute blood loss, you put them in the sun and you make more hemoglobin. And remember, most people who are athletes understand more hemoglobin means more oxygen tissue delivery, means I can do more physiologic work. That's kind of the edge they're looking for. Everybody knows the story about Lance Armstrong and how, you know, he got popped for blood doping. But I don't think people in performance world really understand that decentralized health based on, you know, nature's rules. People forget that UV light increases venous O2. Now, I want you to think about that when you're an athlete, especially a wrestler. When you're anoxic or hypoxic because of the stuff you're doing on the mat, wouldn't be a nice little boost for you to have more oxygen on the venous side of your system? So that way, when it goes to your heart, you're much better on the opposite end, meaning your hemoglobin saturation is always at like 199%. So it gives you that edge. Realize that when you work out in a blue lit gym or like your podcast studio where you are right now, that on a relative basis compared to where I am now, which outside, I mean, you look at my house, I don't have any walls at all. It's completely outside. So like the sun comes in all the time. And I guess what I'm trying to say to you is if you can bring your routine, whatever it is, outside in nature and do it grounded, and you want to understand the science behind it, I don't even tell you as an athlete, you don't even need to understand the science. You just need to physically do it. And what you'll find is probably what, you know, this guy that's going to the Olympics found, why he's following me, because he realizes this is an edge that a lot of people don't use. And remember, they're all addicted to working out inside, using technology, putting the Apple things in their ears, radiating their brain. Dude, you let them do that. I mean, I just famously got on a pretty famous doctor's case, Peter Attia. about he actually made a comment to another performance guy on his own website. I don't know if you've seen this, but he actually said, I love when people come on a podcast and say that, oh, these Apple the AirPods are bad for me, but they can't do 100 push-ups. So he actually is telling the world that doing 100 push-ups is more safe than irradiating your brain. Now, that is psychotic, okay? But that's the level of the thinking that this wrestler is going against. Remember, those guys are listening to Peter Attia, okay? And if you know that your opponent is a believer in centralized things, bro, you use this against them 100% of the time, because you will kick ass and take names. And the beautiful part, I guess, what I bring to the game, none of this stuff is really expensive. You know, the sun, grounding. I would tell you, deuterium depleted water will cost you some money, but once you understand why you're using it and what you're trying to do, again, it's another way, a thermodynamic advantage that no one is testing you for. So you should use it.
Yeah, and when I think of wrestling, it's almost entirely done indoors year round, right? And a few things I think of. Well, the ancient Greeks, when they wrestled, the palestra was outdoors, and it was on dirt, and they were barefoot. So they were grounding, they were getting sunlight, and it's in their books of why that was important. Another thing I noticed is that when you watch the Russians train for years, they do a lot of work outside. Maybe they have their sneakers on, but they're outside. They're getting fresh air, they're getting sunlight, and they've been the dominant force in wrestling for some time now.
Right. And you also have to realize the other thing the Russians do in their training is they always use leather-based shoes, and they're always using cold. And cold actually, it primes the mitochondria for even better performance. So remember, the whole game here, outside of what your techniques are, it's really about delivering more oxygen and controlling reactive oxygen species and reactive nitrogen species in your environment, so that you're able to have supreme leverage, because that's really what wrestling is about. It's about hand placement, leverage, and having a good connection. Not only connection to the earth, but you also have to have a connection to your opponent. Why? You're actually using your proprioceptive sense to actually feel what that person's doing to counterbalance their moves. And I believe that the more in tune your senses are, which proprioception is a big one of the key things that grounding brings a wrestler is you will be way better on the proprioceptive sense, so that you'll be able to anticipate moves and, and countermeasures much quicker. I think in all the MMA performance athletes, at least that I see, this is probably the biggest missing link to all of them. That's why I was kind of interested to talk to you that, a wrestler is now starting to use this. And it's kind of funny because, as you said, the history of wrestling is an outdoor sport, and now we've turned it into an indoor sport. We're seeing the same thing. For example, take a look at soccer. They're all now playing with shoes that don't ground them. So they wonder where all these lower extremity injuries are coming from. That's where it comes from. They wonder where the brain injuries come from hitting the ball with their head. It's because they're not grounded. The NFL, ACL tears, Achilles tears. It's like off the charts. You hear the NFL Players Association, talking about, the fake fields. They're absolutely right, but they don't realize it starts with the shoes, not the fields. And just think about some of the players' careers who've been short. And what do we see? I mean, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 60 years old, so I'm a little bit older. I remember the days of Tom Seaver, Nolan Ryan, and Steve Carlton, where they could go out and throw 300, 320 innings, get 300 strikeouts. Today, you have supreme athletes in Major League Baseball. They're on pitch counts because they're soft. Their redox potential is terrible. That's now the norm in baseball. And I'm going to tell you, I believe the reason that we're seeing this, and I'm sure you guys see it in wrestling, I think wrestlers from yesteryear are way better than the ones now from probably physical endurance and strength, because they actually trained the right way, and which is outside. And this is not just a performance thing. This is actually for your health as well. And it's one of the probably the most profound statements I can make, because I've taken care of a lot of professional athletes. you would be surprised. Some of the best athletes in the world are the most unhealthy. You know, the one that I always like to highlight is Reggie White, because, you know, he was the best defensive end in football for a long time. But remember, he died at 38 years old from obstructive sleep apnea. And what made him good is he was doing hypoxic training pretty much his whole life, because nobody actually knew that he had obstructive sleep apnea. And when you think about, you know, what you're bringing to the table here with me today, I think there's a place for hypoxic training, but I also think that you also need to find out how far you can go with oxygenation, you know, through your own,
Yeah.
you know, your own blood count, your own hemoglobin saturation curve. I think it plays a huge role in your sport for sure.
Yeah, people think about enhancing just in terms of artificial, but no, you have a lot in the tank that you're not using, the optimization. If I could, I guess what I'm thinking is most of our audience has no idea with a lot of these terms that we're throwing around, like the light water magnetism,
Yeah.
centralized medicine, grounding. You could attack that however you want, but if you could break that down for people who might be a little bit interested, they've seen the Kyle Dake documentary a little bit. How should we look at that? How do we understand it?
Let's break it down between centralized and decentralized medicine. Centralized medicine is the paradigm that believes everything is about RNA and DNA. Decentralized medicine is about the other genome in the cell that you may not know too much about. It's the mitochondrial DNA that you only inherit from your mother. Why is this important for wrestlers to get? Is it turns out mitochondrial DNA is the one that makes all the energy in your cell. So in other words, it doesn't make energy, but it transforms energy from the environment inside of us. It does it through food, from sunlight, and through water. So that's the major paradigm shift. In medicine, we now look at mitochondrial medicine as the king. So what's the idea behind this? We believe all metabolism is spontaneous, meaning that it happens all the time. The environment that you're in dictates the metabolism that's used, and then genes just modify where the energy flow goes. From physics, where did this idea come from? From actual quantum physics, we know that time dictates the flow of energy in all matter. So that's an axiomatic truth I gave you. It's a universal law of nature. It's based on the three laws of thermodynamics, but there's a fourth one that's been added to quantum thermodynamics. It's something called Pyrrhogene's theorem, or Arrhenius's fourth law. Those are the two guys that get credit for it. And that's called the dissipative state of matter. Why does this stuff matter to wrestlers? Because you guys are trying to become masters of the dissipative state. Okay. So it really is an energy game. And anything that's an energy game means timing has to be perfect. I don't have to, you know, teach wrestlers how important timing is, but the timing I'm talking about is the timing that occurs inside cells at literally what we call attoseconds, femtoseconds. We're talking about times that would split your head open if you actually realize it's 15, it's like 0.000 with 15 zeros. That's how quick this stuff happens. And the better you improve your tissues in your body, that's where that extra juice, the extra performance comes from. And when you understand that, that's why I think this wrestler has decided to add some of my stuff to the game, because he's seen massive improvements. And you want to optimize that three-legged stool in your biology. Centralized medicine doesn't do any of this. Now, I will tell you, the big change occurred about 2009 when some of the work I did with some NFL players, I can share it with you. It's no shock. I used to know the wife of a very famous, probably Hall of Fame, eventually, player for the Chicago Blackhawks. The year before they won their first cup, everybody on the team was vitamin D deficient for the reason we just talked about, because, you know, hockey's become now an indoor sport like wrestling. So what did they do? The simple thing, this guy got the information from his wife. Everybody on the team got started on vitamin D pills. Not something I would recommend, but that's what they did. The next year, they were the least hurt hockey team the whole way, and they won the cup. So this got talked about at an NFL symposium, and the Pittsburgh Steelers actually did the same thing. They found out that everybody was vitamin D deficient. They were also the most hurt team. And then, this is 15, 16 years ago. They optimized their vitamin Ds. Interesting with the Steelers, half the team did it the right way, the other half did it the wrong way. Turns out they also wound up winning the Super Bowl. That was the year of the Harrison TD, all the way back when, Larry Fitzgerald was chasing him on the sideline. I think it was 2009 or 2010, somewhere around there. And when you see this in other professional sports, now, like, I used to be looked at as a crazy on the internet for this stuff. I started to tell people, look, if you want to recover from your injuries, you're an NFL player, you should use photobiomodulation, red light therapy. And most people that were trainers in the NFL didn't understand that the sun behind me is 43%, red light. And when you show them this data, you show them that the mitochondria, the cytochrome proteins that are in there that transform energy, they're all red light chromophores. That's the reason why, for performance, photobiomodulation makes sense. In this case, it was to get back to performance after the injury. So now every single NFL team, every single NHL team now use photobiomodulation. That is now standard of care, even in the centralized medicine. So are the centralized guys beginning to pluck some of my stuff to use in these athletes? The answer is yes. What I would tell you with the wrestlers, you guys can use photobiomodulation, but it's much better for you to just bring your training outside. That's really the take home. And like you guys said, you use sneakers or wrestling shoes. Try to make custom ones for training. That's all leather. Why? Because you can ground through it. What's the purpose of grounding? Let's make this simple for the wrestling audience. Go to your coffee maker today and look at it. You'll see there's 2 plugs, and then there's that third one come out. You know that they have coffee makers that only have 2 plugs that are not grounded. What you may not know is the one that's not grounded uses more energy, and it's going to cost you more, but also it's not as efficient. So that's how an electrical socket in your house works. Turns out with you, you're designed to either have your hands or your feet on the ground. Why is that the case? We are the only primate on Earth that has sweat glands in our hands and our feet. Chimps and gorillas do not have that. The reason nature put them there, so we sweat to make a better connection with the earth, okay? The reason other primates don't need it is because they're always in trees. They climb trees, so they're holding on to the tree, so they're grounded that way. We're designed to move across the tectonic plates. That's actually how your sport works. So why not, when you train, be connected to the earth? In other words, you're adding the third grounding plug when you have leather soles, okay? Because leather allows, remember, leather is skin of animals. That allows grounding to go back. In fact, do I think the guy that you told me about that's going in the Olympics, he's doing it barefoot. I actually think that's even better. Would I push that even over grounding shoes? The answer is absolutely. I think that's a brilliant thing to do for a wrestler. I will also tell him, I can just imagine the bones and the muscles in his feet from a proprioceptive sense. If you wrestle this guy, he's developing all those muscles where everybody who wears sneakers, these things are all atrophy because there is no chronic connection. Just like I told you, the efficiency of the coffee machine isn't as good when you're not grounded. The same thing is true with your feet. And think about it. Your leverage, all your leverage comes from the ability to be structured with your feet on the ground. So in your specific sport, I think grounding would take a preeminent role, to be a really good wrestler, to get an edge.
And that would mean walking as much as you can barefoot on the ground,
Correct.
or having leather shoes. And we're talking about on grass, not on the concrete.
That's the simple thing. You can still ground through concrete, but it's better to do it on grass. The only caveat that we have to talk about is if you are training in a major city and there's a lot of underground power lines, I would just tell you, buy a body voltage meter and find out if there's any stray electricity. In fact, we're doing this podcast today on July 12th. You go to my Instagram page right now, you'll see a picture of a copper pipe in New York City, in Queens, where they had stray electricity and the copper pipe broke. So why am I telling you this? Stray electricity actually ruins transition metals. But you don't know, and I'm sure none of the wrestlers know, that the way bone works in humans is we have 2 copper atoms that hold the calcium and the apatite together. That's actually the crystal of bone. So when you're around dirty electricity or you ground it on it, you pop those two atoms off, your bone becomes softer. Can you be as good a wrestler with osteopenia or osteoporosis? The answer is no. So guess what? Make sure wherever you're doing your training has no stray voltage. That's really important. I will tell you, most gyms, all of them have stray voltage. I can't even tell you. I can tell you the story. He's almost at the end of his career, but there's an NFL cornerback who actually came into the league with diabetes. He's also a future Hall of Famer. When he played for one team for most of his career, but he was starting to have problems, I think year 7, 8, 9, where he was losing his speed. And he's like, dude, I need to do something. We checked the area where he trained. Dude, it was a total train wreck. And what we did is we had him go talk to an architect to build a perfect training area. And in this area, he put all red light panels on the ceiling and on the walls. And his place is built like this, where there's no walls. He was able to do that because he lived in Arizona. But he played college ball down in the South. And he actually made a comment to me. He goes, I never felt better than when I was at LSU, but we were always outside and we always trained with our shoes off. I said, bro, you need to get back to that. I said, you as a cornerback, I said, you're atrophying everything in your feet because of the shoes you're wearing, but you also have type 2 diabetes. I said, this is a huge factor of why you're beginning to lose your edge. So guess what he does? He goes out. Now I think he's in year 15 or 16. So now he's doubled the length of his career. And as an athlete, that's a huge big deal because it's big money in the NFL. If you can get to a third or fourth contract, which is almost unheard of these days, but that is the edge that this kind of stuff can bring to all performance athletes.
Right. I mean, well, Kyle Dake keeps saying, I'm getting younger and younger. And it's because he's saying that he's feeling great. And he says, I'm just feeling great. You see now, what if an athlete comes to you, what should you, and they said, okay, hey, what can I start integrating in my life? Because we can't control always the practice where it's going to take place, especially like middle school, high school.
About the environment. You got to find out about the environment first. Like the first basic thing that we need to figure out is where the athlete is then, and then assess the environment. So the first thing I would do with a performance athlete, I'm going to send a building biologist out to where they train, where they live, and what they drive. And we're going to do an EMF assessment of that area. We're going to mitigate those simple things and tell them that's issue number one. Then continue doing what you're doing. I don't really give in terms of what their sport is, what really happens. That's what the trainers can do. What I'm optimizing is I'm optimizing mitochondrial function. When you optimize mitochondrial function, then you need to take that energy and power and then make it for the physiologic use that athlete effectively needs. But the first issue is you hack the environment. The reason why all the energy that your mitochondria transform comes from the environment. Okay. I think most wrestlers get that diet's important, but they don't understand the reason diet's important. It turns out it's not as important as all of you think, because the analogy I would give you is I want you to think about a Ferrari. Ferrari comes off the line and it does 225 miles an hour. Everybody knows that. You can put gas in it, it still goes that way. But if you keep running gas through it, it's going to be in the mechanic quicker to clean all the gunk out, but it's still running 225. The same thing is true with the human body. We have engines in us called mitochondria that we're designed to replace through a process called autophagy and apoptosis. That mechanic is built inside of you. Guess what controls that program? A hormone that you've probably heard of called melatonin. Most people think that melatonin is the hormone of darkness. You'd be shocked to know it's made out of aromatic amino acids. So guess what? It's from the sun. So you need to have optimal solar exposure to make sure the mechanic in you can take out the bad engines so you can run 225 miles an hour, because it turns out the fuels aren't as important as the engines. And I think that's the interesting thing that your wrestler guy from the Olympics has actually fallen into. He's like, wait a minute.
Yes.
I'm actually improving my engines, and all my competitors are focused in on the wrong things. And to me, that is a huge insight, for the wrestling community.
Yeah. And he had his entire, the house examined his environment What was that again that they should look into? He did that.
A building biologist.
Okay.
And they can come out and they can assess for stray electricity. They'll look for ungrounded circuits. They're going to look for anything, especially in your sleep environment, that would destroy your sleep efficiency. Why? Because autophagy and apoptosis tends to happen when we sleep, especially between midnight and 2 a.m. The problem is the way the process works, it has to be optimized from the mitochondrial standpoint. And just so everybody's clear on this, this has nothing to do with your nuclear DNA. The stuff that, the centralized guys are going to tell you, this all happens with the other genome. And this is the reason why there's such a disconnect between the two groups of doctors. And once you optimize your sleep, remember, optimizing sleep doesn't mean, 8 hours square a day and that's it. It means when you sleep that you are able to repair the engines, because there's many people that sleep 8 hours a day, but their sleep efficiency sucks. We can see that, when we do polysomnography tests or we do tests for obstructive sleep apnea. There's plenty of guys that are wrestlers, who have upper airway problems because of the way they train, and they're too overbuilt in their upper extremities. They get apnea and they don't even know they have it.
So what are some practical things they could do to improve their sleep?
Well,
It should be getting to bed at a certain time, getting up at a certain time when they go to before sleep.
Well, think about what you said to me, Jack. How can we optimize their sleep? Well, first, it depends what's wrong with them. It's kind of like saying to a mechanic, hey, I want you to fix my car, but you didn't bring the car in. Or you say to the construction guy, I want you to fix the hole in my sheetrock. Bro, I got to see why you got a hole in your sheetrock to begin with. So remember, not all sleep, like when you just asked me that question, and I'm not trying to be a hard ass with you. I'm actually trying to
No,
get
it's
you
good. It's good.
that sleep is a homogeneous term, just like people think water is, or I should say, the same. Like the water in your tap and the water in your mitochondria, everybody thinks the same. It's not. Sleep is also not the same. And even if you sleep the right amount of time, what happened in the sleep is important. Did you get through stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, REM, and stage 4? Did you go through 3 or 4 cycles a night? That's the key. The guys that really have the optimal performance are getting through all those stages with no problem. They're maximizing REM sleep to make sure that the engines in their body are great. Can you do that if you have obstructive sleep apnea, kind of like Reggie White? The answer is no. You can be a phenomenal Hall of Fame athlete, but you'll be dead at 38 years old. So I'll give you another one. Think about all the guys that are endurance runners. Have you ever asked yourself why they're all dead by the time they're 60? Because it turns out the way they're doing things leads to problems. Give you another one, because I deal with them. Think about NFL football players. Why don't you ever see any of these guys live really long period of time? Because it turns out their sport is burning the candle at both ends, and they never get told this information. Why? Because the time they're being paid like an elite athlete, they're being taught what you guys are interested in. Optimization of performance only. That's a problem. It's a real problem. And what I tend to do with athletes, I'm going to say, look, if you optimize your health, you're going to optimize your performance. And then if there's something that you have to do to hypertrophy a certain part of your body, great. But as soon as you're done, you need to change that. So for example, one of the most controversial ideas that's different, say, than me and than Peter Attia, many people believe big, strong, huge muscles are an advantage. It's actually a disadvantage for your health when you get past the age of 40 or 50. The reason why? Muscles are superfluous. Like if we were gorillas, then it would be important, but we're not. We bury our mitochondrial density in our brains and our hearts. And what do humans die from most commonly? Brain and heart disease. Wow. So guess what? Does it make any sense while your mitochondrial engines age every decade that you hypertrophy muscles which aren't designed to have extra mitochondria in them? What you just created is a steal syndrome. So you're stealing here from here. And this is a very counterintuitive idea. But if you look at some of the newer NFL players, like the guy that I would point you guys to is Russell Okung. He's a big Bitcoiner, but he used to be a monster left tackle for the Seattle Seahawks. He quit playing football. I guess it was about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. He went from like 330 pounds. Now, if you look at him, he looks like he's about 220. And And he looks just like a tall, lanky guy. He got rid of all of his muscle mass. Now, a lot of the NFL linemen are getting that message that if they want to do well long term, you want to shed the excess muscle. It's not, I'm not trying to tell you want to be weaker, but you can still be superhuman with smaller muscles. If you don't believe me, go look at the Sherpas. The Sherpas can go up to the top of Everest and pick up, 140 kilogram European who's dying from hypoxia and carry him down 20,000 feet. And this person only weighs 140 pounds. So strength isn't a function of hypertrophy,
Right.
And people don't understand that. We have the term in sports that like football players know, and I'm sure you guys have it in wrestling. This dude is country strong, Yeah. Guess what? You need to realize country strong generally is formed by people who work outside. That is the key.
Right. Okay. So I guess the way we need to be looking at it is different. We need to improve our health, and then that will lead to an improved performance. And we're saying is we're leaving a lot on the table.
I think you are. Yeah, I think you are. And I think that's why I was very interested to talk to you, because I don't get a chance to talk to a lot of wrestlers. And the fact that this guy is using, a lot of my stuff makes me happy, because that tells me that guys who are in the wrestling community, they're going to be physically fit, but they're also going to be ready for their 40s, their 50s, their 60s. They're not going to face some of the stuff, that I see with performance athletes. Some of my best friends who played in the NFL, they're now dead. And they were younger than me. And for me, that's the ultimate fail. I just did a big talk at Bitcoin Prague about how decentralized health and wealth are linked. And one of the guys that I used as the analogy in there, I used tech guys. I said Steve Jobs, Paul Allen, and then a guy named Hal Finney. These are all leaders in the tech world. They all died before, their 65th birthday. I said, how big an epic fail is it to be a billionaire and be dead at that age? People laud this, they think, well, Jobs was a giant. Well, what kind of giant are you when you're not there for your kids? And it turns out the stuff that you made caused the problem. So I look at this the same way when I see a guy like you who's talking to wrestlers. Your guys' career could eventually hurt you. And I want you to have that thought in your head so that you go, okay, I get this. I get what this guy's saying. He wants to make me wiser. Like, I have a very famous saying that it's no longer about survival of the fittest. It's survival of the wisest. Why? Because the environment that we have built for humans to live in is completely unnatural, completely unhealthy. And I need you to cut that umbilical cord to the centralized thinking that's all around us. Because, like, for example, the communication you and I are having right now, it's done over the internet. It's wonderful that you and I can talk. No question. We're both going to agree on that. But we have to also agree, if we use this 24/7, this is going to have unintended health consequences. And guess what? It's not going to be good for you, and it's not going to be good for me. So what am I saying? The dose makes the toxin in just about everything. So you need to understand, okay, I want to be the best that I can be in my field, but I also want to be the best father, the best husband.
Right.
When I'm 50, when I'm 60, when I'm 70, when I'm 80, and if I die, I want to die falling off the roof because I'm changing the shingles, something like that. Then I think I want you to be able to not just survive. I want you to thrive. That's what my goal is for my patients, not just the athletes that I take care of. And unfortunately, the athletes are the ones that destroy themselves the most, because they falsely believe that, right. They don't realize that the things that they're doing actually is harming them. Like, you may get another year or two, but dude, is that worth, you developing dementia and taking yourself out? I mean, I can't tell you. I could probably tell you the story. Tight end for the Titans, who was a real good friend of mine, Frank Wycheck. Undrafted free agent, made a great career. Dude is dead. He died last year. And his career was, cut short, 32 years old by concussions. And I kept telling him, dude, You can't keep going back. But the problem was the job became a drug. And, it's really hard for some people to walk away from something they're good at and something they love. But when something you're good at and something you love is harming you, you need to make a proper decision. And if you can't make it, your circle of 6 around you, the other 12 eyes, those are the people that have to be willing to tell you, hey, look, I think you need to think about this. So this wrestler that you've told me about, I'm hoping that all the wrestlers who listen to this podcast realize this dude needs to be in your circle of 6. Listen to what he's doing, but also I personally think you should ask him why he decided to do it. Because I think the why is probably the most important thing. Why did he decide to do all of these things? You've told me that it was a competitive edge because he kept getting beat by one guy. Okay, I'm cool with that. But I'd be willing to bet you if you unpacked it with him, there's even something more there.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. He's thinking about overall. I mean, he's 4-time NCAA champ. He's Ivy League wrestler from Cornell. So he's definitely thinking about the big picture and health and wellness and longevity, without a doubt.
Yeah, and to me, that makes me, really happy that it's touched this sport. Plus, he's an Ivy League guy, so that means he's not a dumbass.
Right. And he has the intellectual stamina that he's always said to really dive deep down the rabbit hole, whereas other people won't do it. So that's why I think to make it simple, because most people don't have that level of commitment or intellectual stamina that he has. How do we best assess our environment? Like, I know you gave us one thing we could do, but how do I assess my sleep, my eating, my level of grounding? Am I doing enough? And then I got to start there.
Your labs tell a story. They're not the full picture, but they tell a story. So, for example, how would I tell you that you're living an ungrounded life? The things that I look at, if you're eating a good diet, meaning mostly protein and fat, not a lot of carbs. The carbs have to be in season to your latitude and longitude. Your triglycerides should be low, insulin level should be low, glucose level should be low, and your vitamin D should be minimum above 60 nanograms per milliliter. If you don't hit those metrics right away, I know there's a problem.
So go to a doctor and get the labs right away. You would recommend.
You don't need a doctor anymore. That's the beautiful part of this. Okay. You can go to like anylabstestnow.com. You can go buy my book on Amazon, look at the chapter on labs, order all those labs. And when you get the labs, then you can say, okay, where's my problem? And you have the test there. You go to my website. I have blogs on redox. Most people don't even know what redox is. The way I like to share it with my athletes, I'm like, bro, think about your F-250. When it's minus 30 in Minnesota and the car doesn't start, to call AAA, right? Guess what? That means your car has a redox problem. What do? You jump it. So what is that all about? It's the net negative charge in the car. That's the same thing in you. So your net negative charge is the key. Well, when you take this to the fundamentals, what's the net negative charge we're talking about? Electrons. Electrons are the only thing that absorb light. So it's the photoelectric effect. The crazy guy with the hair, Einstein, he won the Nobel Prize for that. You're designed to collect electrons from food and from your environment. You get them from your feet, doing the grounding, touching the environment. Like I tell people, make like the Sphinx. So the guys that have the best redox potential have the best engines. That's the key. The labs tell us maybe where the problems are. So for example, if somebody comes in and say they look like a physical freak, but their BUN and creatinine ratio on a Chem 7 shows that they're dehydrated. What is that a clue? Well, you guys may not know this, but your mitochondria makes CO2, but it also makes water. So if your mitochondria good, don't you think that your BUN creatinine probably should be more optimized? The answer is yes. So it means water inside of you, not the water you drink. The water your mitochondria creates is a metric for redox. What do neurosurgeons like me do to check that? We do MRIs. We actually look at the water content of the organs in your body. That's actually what an MRI does. Most people don't know that. Most performance athletes do not know that. And then I point out some this casual finding. Do you know that when a child is born, 80% of its body weight is in water? When you're 60 years old like me with gray hair, you're about 55%. So what is one of the things about energy and mitochondria that we know just from aging? That mitochondrial efficiency affects water production and the amount of water in you. Turns out you're optimized for athletic function between 18 and 30 years old. 28 seems to be the ideal age. That's when everything is optimized. That's the target age that you would try to keep for as long as you can. But remember, normal aging, it's called heteroplasmy. Heteroplasmy is mitochondrial inefficiency. It goes up 10% every decade that you're around. So for example, me at 60 years old, I'm now working on my 7th decade of heteroplasmy. What does that mean? It means my F-250 needs to go to the mechanic much more frequently. I have to be in the sun longer. So you asked me before the podcast starts, Jack, where are you at? I'm at the 13th latitude. Now, do you understand why I'm here and I'm not where you are? Because to run this Ferrari engine, I need to constantly optimize that, because this is my Ferrari engine. And the key thing is I optimize for my brain and my heart more than anything else. A wrestler isn't just concerned with that. They have to optimize their brain, their heart, and probably their musculoskeletal system and their peripheral nervous system. Eventually, when your wrestling career is over, what you need to do is then you need to focus on your brain and your heart. There's other things that I would tell you to do. Like I would tell you to become a reader, not on a screen, books. I'd also tell you to learn another language. I'd tell you, actually, I'd like you to learn how to play an instrument. I don't care if you're terrible. What are you doing? You're actually trying to develop the opposite side of your brain. Remember, athletes develop their left side. They never develop their right. Do you think you can be as good a wrestler if you have half a brain that you haven't developed?
Right.
Well, guess what? It's the same thing in neurosurgery, because guess what? I hypertrophied one side of my brain for a long time. When I got older and I started to realize, hey, I can improve my neurologic function if I start doing things on the other side. Well, guess what? What if you got that message when you were 20, 25, 30, and you said, bro, I never even thought about this. That's another thing for you to do. And I don't know if our, wrestling guy for the Olympics is doing stuff like that, but I would assume if he's had an Ivy League education, he's probably realized that art and science, or performance and art, they go together. Maybe you just buy a doodle book, or you pick up a paint set, or you goof around, with kids in a kindergarten. Like, you want to play, you want to create. I always tell, I just gave 3 NFL players that are currently in their gig now Rick Rubin's new book on creativity. I said, bro, read this book. This book will expand your right side. I said, your performance will improve. And they're like, dude, that's total. Guess what? All 3 of those guys, actually, 2 of them just got new contracts. One of them now wants to go to be all pro. I said, this book he missed it by like literally this much. I think this coming year, it'll be interesting. And I said, find something that you normally wouldn't do. And I always point out, I told him about Larry Fitzgerald. I said, Larry Fitzgerald his gig when he first came in, he went and traveled to places he'd never been to. And the reason he did it, because he wanted to learn new things. That I said, he only ran a 4.55 when he came out. But guess what? He played for 14, 15 years. He's a Hall of Fame receiver. All the things he did, learned different languages, different culture. Dude, these things were germane to his performance, but he never got told that by an Arizona Cardinals trainer.
The time is now to take your mindset to the next level with Wrestling Mindset. Make sure you go to our website, wrestlingmindset.com, and sign up for your free trial session today. Don't wait any longer. You want the mental edge right now. When you sign up for the free trial session, you're also going to get a copy of our free ebook, Building the Predator Mindset. This book has helped thousands of people build confidence, relax under pressure, get motivated, and build mental toughness in wrestling, school, and life. Make sure you sign up for your free trial session today.
And that's the whole point that I'm trying to make to you, that decentralized medicine is also decentralized thinking. I want you to inject it everywhere in your life. I mentioned Russell Okun to you. The reason I did it on purpose, he's a Bitcoiner. Well, remember, Bitcoin is decentralized money. So if you're an athlete, doesn't it make more sense to have money that's decentralized than centralized? Because centralized money goes down in value. That's called inflation. Well, Bitcoin doesn't do that. It goes up constantly. So doesn't it make sense when you guys are trading time for money to actually be compensated in money that grows even stronger? That was Russell Okung's mindset while he was playing in the NFL. I mean, just think about that for a minute. Saquon Barkley's doing it now. OBJ's doing it now. Aaron Rodgers is doing it now. Think about all the names I just threw at you. Do you see that those guys are at the top of their field? And did this have anything to do, with their performance? Well, the trainer would say no, but I'm going to tell you it does. Why? Because you can go pedal to the metal even harder when your money is growing for you even crazier. So you can throw caution to the wind when you do that. You shouldn't throw caution to the wind when your money is constantly going down in value, especially if you're an athlete.
Right. And I like what you're saying about training different parts of your brain. See, a lot of the mentality among wrestlers is, I can't be thinking about wrestling all the time. So I need to do things to take my mind off of the sport also to relax. And what a lot of wrestlers turn to, two things: video games and getting absorbed in a TV show, binge watching a TV show. That's like the opposite.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing, the reason I interrupted you really quick, I mean, we haven't even talked about that, but blue light tech exposure, like anybody who's a wrestler does that means that this guy that's going to the Olympics, bro, he should kick ass and take names, because I never want my athletes doing that. That is the fastest way to lower melatonin in your brain. So you know,
video games,
anything with blue light destroys your melatonin level. So remember what I just told you, melatonin is the key to autophagy and apoptosis. So you realize I want you to relax, but I don't want you to relax destroying the hormone that improves your performance, because that's, you see what I'm saying?
If they're going to have a lot of screen time, I mean, I have these different. I mean, should I be wearing the dim glasses? Should I be wearing the blue light? Does that help?
One's in your right hand. You should have those on anytime, but like on your screen. And I can't see your screen. You can't see mine.
Yeah.
I have blue light protection on it, but I'm also outside. So remember, I'm getting 7 different colors of the frequency from the sun here. You're not, unless you have a window open in that room. So realize that you have subtracted out all the UV and about 40 to 60% of the red. What did I tell you about your mitochondrial engines? They got 4 cytochrome proteins in it that are all red like chromophores. So can you be the best you when you're inside in this room? The answer is no. Well, think about your training. Think about your life. Think about the video games. I mean, you're sitting in front of blue light. Red is the antidote to blue in mitochondrial medicine. So that's the reason why the sun is even more important to wrestlers who abuse technology. There's things that you can do. And this was the point when you said to me before, Jack, tell me how we would optimize this, that, and that. This is the kind of thing you sit down with me and you tell me about your habits and what you're doing. Bro, we're cutting the fat right then and there. These are big moves that will improve your performance. And will I fill that time with you doing something else in terms of changing it? Absolutely. No question about it. But I don't know the proclivities of wrestlers. I don't. The only person that I've personally ever taken care of, and you'll find this ironic, one of my mentors in neurosurgery, he's now at the end of his life, Dr. David Klein. He wrestled for University of Pennsylvania, another Ivy League guy.
That was my school. Yep.
Right. And he wrestled and he was a wrestler. What did he replace wrestling with when he became older, like around 40 years old? He would swim in between cases every day. Now he's close to 90 years old now. Okay. And he's still going. And I don't think he swims anymore, but swimming for the back end of his life replaced wrestling. And he told me that swimming and wrestling had a lot in common, which I thought was very interesting, because he said I could get a hypoxic. I could also improve, my leverage. This guy continues to walk with, without any assistance up to the end of his life. And, movement is important. If you can move, it tells you that your neurologic system is doing really well. But, Father Time still remains undefeated. I think we all need to understand nobody's getting off this planet alive. The key that I want my athletes to know is I don't want them getting taken out by my profession, because that effectively is what happens. You know, when they get joints replaced, they get this to happen, that to happen, they get early heart disease. No, I don't want any of that. I want you to die of natural causes, you know, when you're an old. And I think the best way for you to understand is that the evolution on Earth provided you with an unbelievable master blueprint. It's decentralized science called nature. The science of nature is quantum mechanical. Okay. That's what light is. That's what water is. That's what magnetism is. So let's break down what the wrestler needs to know. Sunlight, proper solar exposure. What is the number one thing I want a wrestler to do? Never not see a sunrise the rest of your life. Every single day, the sun rises, you're rising, and you're there to see it. You don't have to see it directly. Indirect is fine, but you must get up. What does that do? It starts the circadian mechanism in your brain. When the sun sets, light sets in your environment. So that means when your buddies want to go to the bar to go pick up chicks, you're not doing that. Okay. You're not doing that. And if you do it, you're wearing your funny little glasses. Okay. You don't wear any sunglasses. You don't wear any sunscreen. You train outside. You want to have skin in the game. That's the story of light. Okay. What is the story of magnetism? Because this is probably the one that bend most people's heads. All of you have heard about free radicals. You probably don't know what they are, but they're chemicals that have one unpaired electron. What does that mean? They're magnetic at some level. It turns out they're really important. The electric chemistry, remember, we call light an electromagnetic wave. I think most of you know that. The electric field dominates daytime. The magnetic field dominates night. What is decentralized medicine? Light and dark cycles. So the magnetic side of chemistry that's important is controlled by free radicals. Who makes the free radicals in us? Mitochondria, predominantly. Other places do make it. But it turns out those free radicals are really important to control timing in your body. So for example, when you're in a blue lit gym, even if you don't eat anything, it's like you're eating cheesecake and your insulin and blood glucose levels go up. Do you think that's good for an athlete to glycate their muscles and their joints, you know, constantly for 20, 30 years? The answer is it's not. You already know that. You're laughing, so you get it. So the key is, once you understand that a different free radical signal is made by the light environment you're in, you're like, okay, so what Jack is saying, I need to really use the sun during the day and darkness at night. And then I've basically just controlled all electric chemistry and magnetochemistry that controls timing in my body. Once timing is controlled, time controls the flow of energy and matter in you. That is how you get to optimal. The last leg of the stool is water. The water that you produce is the single most important thing in your body. It's the thing that gives you best performance, things that gives you ultimate, radioactivity from centralized medicine, keeps you away from guys like me the longest. You want to make supreme water. How do you do that? What's the number one way? The lesson 1 and 2 I gave you. You have to control sunlight and darkness. Then you'll make the best water in your body. That water is called deuterium depleted water. For those of you who have never heard the word deuterium, it's an isotope of hydrogen. Most of you know that water is H2O. The H stands for hydrogen. Our bodies and the trees behind us, photosynthesis and oxidative phosphorylation, we're racist. We like light hydrogen. We don't like deuterium. Deuterium makes us age faster. So it turns out mitochondria that allow too much deuterium in it slows everything down. It's like putting Aunt Jemima in your carburetor in your car. You don't want that to happen, okay? So if, say, for example, we'll use you as an example. You come to see Uncle Jack and we find out that your triglycerides are low because you tend to eat a carnivore-ish diet. That's good, but your blood glucose and your insulin are higher than it should be. That tells me that non-native EMF is a problem in your environment. Why? Because I told you, blue light, RF, and microwaves from video games, all that raises your blood glucose. I'm saying, bro, we need to fix this right away. So how do we do it? We're going to put you in a red light bed. We're going to put you in the sun more, and then I'm going to hand you something called deuterium depleted water. And you're like, Jack, what's that? This is water. Remember the idea that I gave you earlier that everybody looks at water as homogeneous, but it's not. It's heterogeneous. Turns out seawater or water from the hydrology cycle has 155 parts per million deuterium in it. That's by nature. You live in the equator, it's got more deuterium in it than if you live at the poles. You live at the poles, it's better. So what would I tell you? I want you to buy Icelandic water. I want you to buy Voss. That's the water I want you to drink. Say if you're like the guy going into the Olympics, Jack, I want the best water I can get. Then you need to drink 20 parts per million. You're going to have to pay about 20 bucks a bottle for this water. And you drink that, or you cut it with the water you drink. And you do that through your performance. Most of my athletes that are high level, all of them drink deuterium depleted water. The reason I don't talk about it too much is because it's superfluous for most people that don't have mitochondrial diseases. The people that have mitochondrial disease that I take care of, predominantly people with cancer, people with peripheral artery disease, things like that, will use that then. But if you're a normal, healthy guy that doesn't have any diseases, not take any medicines, I don't want you wasting your money on water. I'd rather you waste your money buying a vacation home here in El Salvador so that you can stay healthy. That's really the goal. And, you know, if the athlete has enough money, I'm fortunate to work with a lot of athletes that have money. I basically tell them, I want you to leave the environment you're at. I want you to pick it up and move it to a better place. So you probably have heard, I've done a lot of podcasts with Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin's one of my guys. Jack Dorsey that used to own Twitter is one of my guys, also a big Bitcoiner. What did I get them to do? Pick up where they were, drop their life somewhere else. Why? Jack was a tech abuser. He's fixed that. Okay. Rick also was a tech abuser. He's also a nighttime abuser because of the music industry. Totally changed that. So the thing is, when a wrestler sees that two people outside their field who are known as leaders in their field, they're optimizing themselves for their businesses. And I want you to realize these things can also help you. Which one you're really deficient on, I don't know. There's only one way to find out, is you physically have to be evaluated, and we have to sit down and talk. I'm going to ask you questions that no other doctor's ever asked you before. And you're going to go, why the fuck are you asking me that? Then when I tell you, you go, bro, I didn't even understand. Now that makes sense. And what I'm trying to do is figure out what part of you we need to expand so that you can get what you want. So you go back to your trainer and then you become the best version of you. That really is the goal. My goal is to make sure that you are thermodynamically efficient. Then I turn you back over to the trainer. Now, if the trainer breaks principles that affect my work, I'm going to fucking rip his head off. And trust me, I've got into it with a lot of those famous trainers, because a lot of the things that they're telling the athlete to do, it's specific for their specialty, you know, their sport, but it's not good for them. And my duty is to the patient, to the athlete. I tell them the reason why we're at odds, and then I let them make the decision. That's the difference between a decentralized doctor and a centralized doctor. They're paternalistic. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to trust you because you trust me. You're entrusting me with your life. Therefore, I have to work for you. And the difference is, in centralized medicine, remember, most of the doctors now work for a hospital system. They work for an insurance company. There's, in other words, a middleman, but we like to call in Bitcoin parlance an oracle problem. And if you have a middleman between you and your sport, generally, you're leaving on the table. You're totally leaving on the table. And that's the reason why when you asked me to do this podcast and asked if I knew this cat, I almost think what he's doing is using my stuff and subtracting his oracle, probably in the wrestling world, out. And the fact that he's actually seeing these benefits, you don't even know how happy that makes me, because I hope this viral infection that we're talking about spreads through the wrestling community. Why? You guys will actually then become leaders, you know, with other professional athletes, where you'll be able to help them. Because, you know, like, think about professional wrestling. You know that it's an entertainment game, but the thing is, these guys also die way sooner than they should, right?
Right.
Well, look, you guys take your sport serious. Some of you, I'm sure, will go into professional wrestling. I want to make sure that you infect them and say, dude, you can do this, but we got to do this safer. You know, we can't keep tearing our bodies apart, because what message are we sending to future generations. Why are kids going to, 10, 15 years old, going to want to go into wrestling if everybody's dead at 50 or 60 years old? Or, their ears are the size of cauliflowers and their brains are mush and, they're getting joint replacements. We don't want that. We want to see this ancient sport survive.
Right. Exactly. And now, I think about so what does a person do who lives in like northern United States? Like I'm 20 minutes out from New York City with people living in Wisconsin, Michigan. Maybe they don't have the best light water magnetism. They're going to bed at maybe 12 or 1 or 2. They're getting up at 9 or 10, or they're not getting a full sleep. They're getting up early. They might be burning it on both ends. I know that's always.
I would tell you because we don't have the time to get through all this. It would be like a 10-hour podcast.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, because I don't like throwing other people's podcasts in another guy's podcast, but I think in your case, this is appropriate. I did a podcast with a kid from the UK, young guy. His name's Owen Sheesby. I would tell everybody who's a high latitude liver, who's a wrestler, go listen to that podcast, because in that podcast, I tell you, if you're a high latitude human, these are the things you need to optimize. Okay.
Good.
Those things would be radically different than what I would tell Usain Bolt. Remember, and I like to use Bolt. If you remember when the Olympics, when he won his 5 gold medals, Bob Costas asked him, is it true that we heard that you trained by running on the volcanoes of Jamaica, but you ate chicken McNuggets? And he goes, yeah, it's true. That's exactly what I did. The point that I'm trying to make to you is the point that I reiterated to you earlier. Is the fuels as important as the engines? What did Bolt tell Costas? No, it's not. He's got 5 gold medals to prove something that's very counterintuitive, that he optimized his environment over his fuels. It was a decision that he made. The interesting thing, same type of Olympics, think about Michael Phelps. He did everything exactly wrong. He won a lot of gold medals, but what happened to him after his, fame? His health fell apart, and his mental health fell apart. So you, the athlete, have to understand these stories, and you have to say, how do I want to run my race? And remember, you're an authentic, unique creature. I'm telling you that you can be the best of you, even at a high latitude or a low latitude. But if I was a wrestler, and I'm going to be very honest with you, what I would do, I would move to a tropical environment, train outside, and I would never wear shoes. I would probably wear a Kaniki or a cool tan, bikini shorts. I'd have the best tan that's natural in the world. I wouldn't take any supplements. And I would completely stay away from conventional thinking. I may talk to those trainers, but I'm going to maximize my training in a totally decentralized way. I'm going to commit to doing that for 1 year, and then you check your results. And I think I'm at least very confident in telling you this, that you're going to do a lot better. But the single most important thing is what I've already told you on this podcast. When the sun rises, you rise. When the sun sets, you set. That is axiomatic. You break that, I don't care what else you do. You got to have proper circadian timing in that clock in your eye. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. That controls every other molecular clock in your body. If you don't have that, you ain't going to be optimal, no matter what anybody tells you.
Yeah, and obviously not just wrestlers, but people, as you know, are just real bad. I'm real bad still at that, which is, we're thinking in terms of like, okay, should I be doing cold therapy? Should I be eating seasonally? And you're saying, yes, that's important, but not nearly as important as the light. Should we be doing those other things too?
By far, you got to remember the clock that controls timing in you, it's an optical lattice clock in your eye that controls every other clock in your body. So if you can't tell time accurately, and that's the basis of decentralized medicine. It's the basis of mitochondrial biology. But think about it. How often has anybody ever told you that? Nobody. They always say, yeah, let's optimize your sleep. Okay, tell me how you do it. Well, the first thing you got to do is optimize light and dark cycles. If you don't do that, like, for example, you take your iPhone. This is a thing I did with my kids a long time ago. I checked their cortisol and melatonin studies. From looking at an iPhone, on average, a 15-year-old looks at it 150 times a day. That flattens your cortisol and melatonin cycle. It's gone. So do you think you can be optimized. Like when my son said to me, he goes, Dad, he goes, all my friends are having to take Adderall to stay up and study for tests. I said, I'll make you a deal. Give me your phone. You go to school for this semester. I guarantee you, if you optimize what I'm telling you, you'll crush school and you'll be able to go to sleep before a test and not cram. He's like, there's no way. Guess what? My son graduated with honors and he's now an engineer. He understands that light and dark cycles are actually the key, not only to cognitive functioning, but performance. And the problem is getting meatheads to understand performance doesn't begin in the gym. It begins in your light environment. That is where it starts. In other words, malillumination is far more important than malnutrition. That's the message of the podcast.
Oh, that's great. Like you said, I mean, so many things run through my head. You said like the Sphinx. What you said? You got what does that mean? I've heard you say.
Remember the Egyptians built the Sphinx in the desert. It looks to the east, and all four extremities are grounded. This story that I'm telling you is an ancient story. It predates even the Roman wrestlers. So they knew this stuff was important, but yet we've subtracted this out in our modern life. So you've got to ask yourself as a modern human, why the fuck did they build this huge thing in the desert, at the 28th latitude pointing to the east every day? Well, because that's where the sun rises, dude. That's exactly why they did it. And they knew that that was important to stay healthy. Remember, back then, there was no Kaiser Permanente back then. There was no surgery. To be healthy was to stay away from the things that could take you out, like injury and infection and death. But you get optimized immunity. You do all of that in sun. I mean, think about what we were told in COVID. The stupidest thing ever. Oh, social distance and stay inside out of the sun. The stupidest thing you can do. But you need to realize that the people who gave you that message, they benefit from that because what did they want to sell you? They wanted to sell you a pharmaceutical product. And they knew that if your immunity was destroyed, that you would take it. And that's exactly what 50% of the population did. How's that working out for them now? Not so good when they complied, right? And guess what I'm trying to tell you? The guys that made those decisions in the wrestling world, those are trainers. Those are nutritionists. Those are the people that have probably been working in your industry for a really long time. You need to look at them with the critical eye and say, how much of what these cats are telling me really, truly is the truth? And why am I bringing this to you right now? Something you said that resonated with me. Jack, back in the day, we wrestled on dirt with no shoes on. Why the fuck aren't you doing that now? Go ask your trainer that. Guess what? Go back to the ancients. You'll be shocked. I always tell people this, electronics and photonics is an ancient story and it's built in the Sphinx. I want you to always think about that, because when you do, people may call you crazy because they don't know why you're doing it. But when they find out your why and that you're trying to optimize the timing mechanism to control the flow in your body perfectly so that you become a Ferrari in operation, bro, you just beat them before you even stepped on the mat.
Right.
I think that's what our wrestling buddy is trying to tell you guys.
Oh yeah, which is what it's a strategy, like you said, of Sun Tzu before, right? It's like you're beating them before you're beating them, which is the ideal.
And I think that's one of the really cool things. Like, you look at a guy like Tom Brady. He wasn't the best athlete in the world, but what was he really good at? Processing information. In other words, he was such a good information processor that he's now become the GOAT. What am I trying to tell you? You guys do it through brute force and technique. What happens if you add ultimate cognition to the top of this and your timing mechanism? Do you think that you have to be optimal in those other areas? I think right now, many of you have to be optimal in those other areas because you're lacking in other areas. And no, you may not want to hear this, but your wrestling guru guy is there telling you that. It's not me, the 60-year-old doctor, telling you that. He's actually showing you. That's the proof of work mechanism at work. The proof of work mechanism in a tree, you get oranges when you leave the tree in the sun. If you put a tarp over it, you don't. What is your wrestling guy telling you? Bro, I'm able to beat all my best now because I am embracing nature in my training routine.
Yeah.
Bro, that's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and you could see several wrestlers here and there. One of the other wrestlers from Penn State, I saw he's barefoot now all the time. People are taking little things from him, but I think it's more like piecemeal, not the full picture, which is why I wanted to have you on so we could do a deeper dive into this so people could look at it, not just steal little tricks here and there, but looking at it from the right, macro point of view.
Well, the macro point of view always starts with timing, and that is the inconvenient truth message that you never get through centralized medicine. Decentralized medicine tells you timing is the single most important thing in your life. And it turns out it's circadian timing. That's the reason why the light and dark cycle is preeminent. And, people have been shocked by this. I don't know how much you guys read science, but the paper just came out that showed if you put somebody in red light, you can lower their blood glucose 27%. Has nothing to do with food, has to do with the light. So when you see a paper like that, you go, so what does that mean for my competitor who's working out in a blue lit gym all the time? Also, what does it mean, say, when you go have a match? I'm going to tell you, if I was a wrestler, I would not have my skin exposed indoors. That's when I would wear all the clothes to protect me from the blue light. Like that.
See, that's something I wouldn't have thought of, because we have the headset in all the time. So like things like that would be helpful too. You would clothe up more indoors. We
now know that you have melanopsin, which is the blue light detector, everywhere in your body. So if you're in a gym, like just think about either a gym, a wrestling rink, or an MMA fight. What's irradiating? Blue LED light. If you get a spectroscope out and look at it, there's huge spikes. What does that create? Huge ROS, huge inflammation. So let me ask you a question. Can you be the best wrestler you can be if you've got a huge spike of ROS pulsing through your body? What happens if you're the guy that's smarter than your opponent? He comes out in his tights, nothing else, and you're covered. Do you think that you have better control of your insulin and glucose may make a difference or give you that edge to beat the guy you never beat before? Try it out.
Yeah. No, it's true. And you would ditch the headset, be off the computer as much as you can, or have blue light protection on there.
There's absolutely no chance. Look, you see,
no headset
podcast that I do. Do you ever see me in a headset? You ever see anything in my ears?
No.
Look, between every sense organ in you, there's a sheet of melanin. When you put those AirPods in your ear and the radiation's going through your brain, you're destroying the tan inside your brain. So in other words, you're becoming less efficient. Okay. Like, I'll give you another one. You remember during COVID, what was one of the things that happened to everybody who got COVID? They lost their sense of taste, right? And smell. Do you know why? The virus actually destroyed melanin in the olfactory bulb. That's actually how it goes. Why? Because the virus itself is a mitochondrial toxin. How do you like that? And how did you know it came back? I would tell everybody who lost smell and taste. You never get this from a centralized doc. I said, just go out and get solar exposure on your face. It'll come back in like 4 to 6 weeks. And they're like, you're kidding me. Like, nope. Guess what? That's how it works. The trigeminal nerve actually has connections to the olfactory bulb because it's a cranial nerve. But this is stuff that centralized doctors learn in medical school and they forget because they don't think it's important. Well, guess what? A guy like you, do you think that would be important if you lost your sense of smell? Because say you didn't want to take the jab and you did get COVID and you want that to come back. Do you think if you worked in a gym constantly, doing your sport, could that be the reason why it never comes back? The answer is yes.
Yeah. No, it just feels like we're very, very far behind where we should be. I guess if you were going to train someone now in terms of how to think, like all this information you're giving us, what books or materials? I mean, of course, all of your information too. I want you to give a plug for all of that at the end. Like, how would you walk someone through step by step to understand light, water, magnetism if they were doing this on their own, right?
Yeah,
Which book should they?
I would tell you that the nice thing these days is when I first started this 20 years ago, there was nothing. You had to trust me or you had to trust my blogs. Right. You don't have to do that anymore. There's now books written on this. So for example, first one, to understand the power of light, we're going to take a researcher from a long time ago. The book is hard to find out and it's expensive because I've been talking about it. It's John Ott, OTT. It's called Health and Light. So you buy that book, you'll understand a little bit about sunlight. When you want to take the deeper dive, there's a book written by a guy named Roland Van Wyck. He's a PhD researcher. It's called Light Sculpting Life. That really takes the deep dive. When it comes to blue light, non-native EMF, the Bible is a book called Going Somewhere by Dr. Andrew Marino. He's a lawyer and a physicist. The book on water that I think is written for third graders, it's not completely accurate, but it's good enough for what you guys need. It's The Fourth Phase of Water by Gerald Pollack. That I just gave you 3 Bibles on that. Now, for the red light stuff, the photobiomodulation, which a lot of athletes are now using, there's a book out there by Michael Hamblin. I forget the name of it, but if you put Michael Hamblin photobiomodulation book, you'll pop it up on Amazon. That book is spectacular. Every single one of my professional athletes get that book. And I teach them, no matter what the trainer tells you, you don't lift weights in a blue lit gym, ever.
Huh.
You opt out. I give them all notes. And the trainers, I'm telling you, they call me up, hate my guts. I said, I don't care. My guy's not lifting weights in your off-season program unless you guys put a door in. And guess what they do? Now they're putting these garage doors so the guys can let the natural light in. And guess what? They're not having to work out as much. And their strength is better. No one can figure out how this is working. And I just keep telling my guys, just remember, you're becoming a Sherpa that plays in the NFL or the NHL. You are going to take people to the woodshed. That's how you do it.
So they should, like, let's say they have to work out indoors. Do you open up always open up all the windows?
Oh, you don't have to open up all the windows. I even tell you when you're driving in your car, say it's minus 30 out, okay, where you live, upstate New York. Drive around with the heat on, but open the window, let the sun in. Remember, the photoelectric effect, the way it works, light gets through small cracks. Make sure you don't have anything on your eyes and your skin. Your body needs that solar exposure to know what time it is. That clock inside your head is the single most important clock in your life.
What about, okay, so now I guess personal question. I have contacts. I have hard contacts because I have keratoconus. So I can't, like, I really can't see well with that. What do you do there?
Well, you got keratoconus because guess what? Too much blue light, not enough UV, not enough red. Keratoconus will go away if you listen to what I'm telling you. And guess what? Go to an ophthalmologist and ask him, is there a cure for keratoconus? You know what they'll tell you? No, there's not. Guess what? They also told my father-in-law there was no cure for his AMD except shots in his eyeball. I put him in front of my red light that's right here in my clinic here. Okay. Sat him in front of it for 4 to 6 weeks. They went back to the doctor, checked. He's got no more AMD. I said, isn't that fucking amazing? Just so you know, you have to optimize dopamine and melatonin in your eyeball, and magically almost all the eye diseases go away. Look at your face. I love that. You got the open mouth. You're like, holy dude,
the far side
being lied to.
The keratoconus and the keratoconus and the nearsightedness will go away.
Yes. What you know what nearsightedness is from? It's myopia. What is myopia? A low dopamine amount in your eye. That's actually how you also go keratoconus. What do all the visual photoreceptors regenerate from? Dopamine and melatonin. Oh, we're back to that story again about melatonin. How did I tell you make that? AM sunlight. Bro, I guarantee you got keratoconus, you ain't seen fucking hardly any sun in the morning.
No.
That's your problem.
No, I don't.
There's your problem. You just solved your own problem.
So I got to get out.
If your eyes are bad, do you think your brain behind it can be good? It ain't, bro. So are you set up for problems in your frontal lobes? Are you set up for neurodegeneration down the road? The answer is yes, you are. Why? Because guess what? How do you assimilate light? Through your eyes and your skin. That's why I always call it skin in the game. So, dude, contacts out.
When?
Out. I don't care if you don't see. When you're outside, you're outside. You got the glasses like this? This is what you do. Put them on your nose and then go back. Then you can see. But right here, when it's on the tip of your nose, your eyes are getting everything.
How long throughout the day? Because I can't see jack without my. And I can barely...
Not listening to me until your keratoconus goes bye-bye. And you're the perfect walking creature. If you want this to get better faster, come down to an environment like this. Why? Because the sun is good where you live in New York for 3.5 months. So if you wanted to be a better wrestler, what am I telling you? Does it make sense to live where you're living with keratoconus? No, it doesn't. But guess what? You didn't even know. This is the perfect Sun Tzu moment for you. You didn't even know you were fucking yourself in your own ass by not understanding that the keratoconus is tied to the environment that you're in. And you're saying, well, no, I can't do that. I said, okay, then don't tell me you want to be optimal, because you're not going to be optimal.
What if so if you have your family here and everything, like most people can't, if you just can't up and move, would you say, okay,
Why
well,
not?
we could
My family's in the United States, and when they want to see me, they come here. And you know why that's a smart choice? Let me show you how bad your thinking is. Do you want the people you love to come to a better environment than they're currently in?
you want to be healthy?
Go. There's your answer. That's the real reason you go. Because you know what you say to them? You know, the plane flies both ways, mom, dad, son, daughter, whoever. My kid just called me last night, and I told him we got into a discussion about something, and he goes, I think I need to fly down there next week. And I said, okay, I'll have somebody pick you up. He's got the message loud and clear now. I've told him already the choices that he's making in his employment are counter, and they're not good to his health. So, dude, the advice that I'm giving you is no different than what I told my own son and what I told my own patients. And if you don't like it, you can see me right now. I don't give a fuck if you don't like it, because I'm telling you the truth. But if you can't handle the truth, then you need to handle the disease.
Right.
Got it?
Could they improve? Okay, if someone absolutely wasn't going to move, would you say it will get a little bit, it's not optimizing, and maybe it's far from optimizing, but will it get a little bit better on its own if you're doing the things you're saying? Or you're not good?
My own example. My own example is when my eyesight started to go bad. It was because when I was in medical school, being up all night, taking call and things like that, I got to negative 7.25 diopters, which means I was pretty nearsighted. 20 years ago, when I started down this trek and realizing that everything I was taught in medical school was ass backwards, now I'm down to like 4 diopters. So I've improved my eyesight by 100% in 20 years. Now, do I believe if I would have got the message, say when I was 20, that I would never have myopia? The answer is yes. And realize this is germane to you, because myopia and keratoconus always go together. What the doctors don't tell you is myopia, which is nearsightedness, means your eyeball is more oblong. It changes the shape. That actually changes the clock in your eye. That's actually why you get mitochondrial diseases later in life, which is why I told you you're at risk for dementia. But I guarantee the eye doctor never told you that. Why? Because they don't want to scare. But the reason you get keratoconus predominantly is you have no UV and you have no infrared A light coming through that eye to make dopamine and melatonin optimized. That's how you get that disease. Guess what? AMD, same thing. Another one, glaucoma, same thing. Cataracts are a blue light disease. It's actually the brain trying to protect itself from blue light. That's why the lens gets cloudy. And guess what? Ask the ophthalmologist, are all these diseases associated with changes in the shape of the eye? The answer is yes. Guess what controls the shape of the eye? The eye muscles around it. You know that those eye muscles are skeletal muscles? They're called intraocular muscles, but they are skeletal muscles, just like the muscles you guys work out in the gym. So when they're seeing blue light, guess what happens? Those muscles are atrophying. You're filling them with cheesecake every time. That's where your keratoconus came from.
Man.
And guess what? The eye doctors are not going to tell you what I told you. Why? They want to keep you coming for the big pharma solution, bro. They're going to say, oh, we got a new thing. We're going to try this. We got a lens, and you're going to keep the lens guys in business. Bro, this is a giant casino fiat shill game you're being sold. Just like the dudes that are training a lot of people in the wrestling community. Listen, I'm that bad dude. I'm the guy that's going to tell you, you got to subtract the middleman out and go straight to what you're designed to work with. And what you're designed to work with is the quantum mechanics in your environment of nature. And the more you embrace that, the better you're going to be. That is the story of the podcast, but it's now the story of your consult that you just got at the end of this podcast.
Right. No, I think, because I think about how this is probably related to a ton of other things. I think allergies, misophonia. There's another thing. They say they don't know the cure. They don't know how it happens. right?
Yeah,
And it's
I have blogs on that. You put my name and misophonia in, you'll find out. It's been sitting on the internet. It's from tech abuse.
tech abuse.
Absolutely no question about it. Keratoconus is a modern disease that's tied to artificial light.
That stinks.
Well, it doesn't stink. The truth, look, the truth is designed to be your punch in the mouth.
Right.
But you know what the key is? Do you wake up or do you just continue doing what you're doing? And you want to know the truth? Probably everybody who doesn't follow me, they're like, oh, I got to die of something. And that's it. Those are not my tribe, bro.
Right.
And like I tell people, don't come to me, ask for my help, and then don't use my advice. Because if you do that, I will fucking cut you faster than a butcher cuts through meat in his shop. Because see, that's the other side of decentralized science. Don't waste my time. You want to know why a lot of the centralized doctors are burning out? Because they're taking care of people with diabetes who don't want to do what they need to do. They just want to go through the drive-through in Walgreens, give me the script, give me the Ozempic, and you. I'm not going to do what I have to do. And this is why I said to you, inject decentralized thinking. Hopefully you take this, well. But what I said to you about your family, make them come to you when you have picked a healthier environment. And you know what you're ultimately going to find? This is the crazier thing. You know, when you go on vacation and you're in a tropical environment, you're out and everybody says, well, it must be I'm just de-stressed because I'm not working. No, it's the fucking sun. Okay? That's what it is.
Yeah.
And the thing is, everybody goes, yeah, I know my mood is better. Like, I'm from New York City. Okay? You know, everybody in New York is right? Do you know why we're there's 14 million of us there in artificial lit, being irradiated constantly. You take a New Yorker and you put them in Florida and they go, I love this Florida. I just don't know why more of us are not here. Now you got half of New York living in Florida. And you know what they don't realize? It's the light. It's less people. It's the inverse square law. It's non-native EMF. But guess what? Like you said, most wrestlers don't want to spend the cognitive energy to learn this. But dude, the answer's staring you right in the face. It rises in the east every day. Use it. Nature gives it to you for free.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's a very compelling and very sensical point. And I think about it with even when I put something on my grass, like if I have the pool for my kids, okay, if it doesn't have light for like if the grass doesn't have light for 2 or 3 days, it's dead. If it doesn't have water for a while, it'll last for a while without the water. You cover it from the sunlight, it dies.
Well, that's why I always tell people, I tell my athletes, especially the story of the orange tree. You put a tarp over the orange tree, you're going to get oranges? No. Now I'm going to give you the lesson because you have the problem with the contacts. So realize I told you your master clock is right in your eye. What's behind that? Your pituitary gland. So do you think that you're going to be able to optimize all your pituitary hormones when you have glass in front of your eye? No, dude. The same thing is true with glasses, sunglasses. And then you want to know why you got keratoconus. Why? Because you are living your life seeing only 5 colors, not 7. And you wonder why. Go look at the Pink Floyd album cover. You need all 7. That's the story of quantum biology. If you ain't getting all 7, bro, you're going to wind up with a mitochondrial disease. And that disease you have is a mitochondrial disease. And your ophthalmologists are never going to tell you that.
No.
I know. I learned about keratoconus when I was in medical school, and they told me the same thing they told you. Well, we don't know what causes it, and we don't know what to do about it. Well, it's magically funny. I've had people come to me with keratoconus who are NFL players. You know what I told them? Turn the iPad in and get an old playbook. When you go in a room, you sit next to the window and fucking open it. If they don't have a window that's open, here's a note. Go tell the fucking owner to change it. These guys are in dark rooms all the time. You want to know why they're always hurt? That's the reason why. You want to know why there's no more Tom Seavers? That's the reason why. Because modern training is completely.
I believe it. It makes sense. It's a money making machine. It's a money making machine. That makes perfect sense.
Remember, it's a centralized shill game. That's it. The training routine, just what you said, in your world, that's big pharma in your world. Big pharma in my world is the thing that makes everybody else sick. I'm just telling you right now. Do you know that 75% of drugs sold in a pharmacy, do you know what the target is? all the circadian clock genes. So guess what? Even Big Pharma is telegraphing that people live in an artificial lit world, and we sell you drugs to somehow put spackle on the broken quarter pound. Wouldn't it make more sense for you to get the message and just take the middleman out? That is what decentralized medicine is.
No, makes sense. That's awesome stuff, Jack. I appreciate. I keep you on for a lot longer. But so, where could people find more information from you? And then also, can they, if they wanted to do, I don't know, a consult with you or your team? I'm sure there's going to be some wrestlers who would be interested in that. I'd even think about the importance of that. Of course, you know, myself, my wife, my kids, family. I mean, it's important. Where do we send them?
I would tell you that I only do consults for my members, but my website, jackkruse.com, I have tiers that you can join. If you're interested in doing a DIY, like before you want a full dose of Uncle Jack, you can read my Patreon. Everything on social media is Dr. Jack Kruse, Kruse. But so you go to Patreon /Jack Kruse, Dr. Jack Kruse, Twitter, the same thing, LinkedIn, Facebook. If you go there, if you want to look at any disease, put my name in a Google box and you'll be stunned. You go to my website, I have a form. It'll take you 10 years to get through the form. Just about everything you can imagine is there. But remember, when you have a problem, kind of like your problem, I mean, I'm kind of glad that we went through this with you.
Yeah.
Because most people have a specific problem and they want to search it. And when you come to my information and you start with light water magnetism, you're like, how the hell does this link to keratoconus? Well, now you know how it links.
Yeah.
Guess what? All the data, the information is sitting on my website, but it's up to you to figure it out. Like you said, if you don't have a big science background, you kind of have to be led and say, okay, here it is. The way I teach is the way Socrates does things. I don't tell you what to do. I show you with my flashlight where you need to go. Then it's your job to show me you have skin in the game. Once you show me and you start getting clinical wins, then I go more in for you. Okay. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and not everybody who's going to listen to this, I'm going to be their cup of tea. And that's perfectly okay, because I'm interested in people that don't want to settle for a B, a C, or a D. They want A's. That is my tribe. I want A's. Okay. And I make no apologies for that. If you don't want to do the things, I will shake your hand and say, good luck, go back to the centralized ophthalmologist and see how that works out for you. And eventually they usually come back.
Right. Because you have to actually, if you don't actually get to the heart of the issue, you're just puttering around on the surface, which really doesn't do that much. We all know. Anyone who's trying to be successful in any field knows you can't be successful like that.
Right. But you also have to realize that you have to focus in on the truth. I mean, we all lived through COVID. We saw what the manufacturer truth got us. Now the real truth is starting to come out. And that's the reason why I think I'm more popular now than I've ever been, because I was telling people this 20 years ago. I told all my members, stay far away from anything the government tells you about this condition, because they're all dead wrong. Now, 4 years later, I look like a prophet. But guess what? That idea was buried 20 years ago in mitochondrial medicine. Once you understand truly how we work, dude, it's not hard to do some of the things that you need to do. The problem is, like, as you said, I got to figure out how I'm going to do this in the life that I built outside of New York City. And then you do the best you can in that environment. When you are not hitting your metrics, then you say, okay, I need to add another layer to the onion from Uncle Jack. Like, what's the next step? What's the next step? Then eventually what you're going to find out is, once you get to that layer, like our wrestling guy that's using my stuff, he got there quicker than a lot of other people. Why? Because he's seeing the effect. I would tell people who listen to this podcast, I want you to do the same thing with my information. I don't want you to jump all in. I want you to question me just like you should be questioning Fauci, just like you should be questioning Biden, Trump, Bobby Kennedy. You question your mother, your father. Nobody's got it all right. But you need to find who's got more right than the oracle that's currently in your life.
Right. And it seems like a lot of these ancient Greeks had it figured out. You know the story of Alexander the Great when he met Diogenes?
Yeah.
Where he said, I'll give you anything you want. And he said, stand out of my sunlight.
And the point that I'm trying to make to you is, the story is recapitulated all the way back to our history. But you know what the key is? The key is, are the people listening to this podcast, will the message resonate? The ones that took something from this podcast, those are the people that I focus in on. I don't focus in on everybody. See, I learned this lesson. Remember, as a doctor, I'm supposed to take care of everybody. But
Okay.
I looked at biology and I said, we had 5 extinction events on this planet for a reason. Nature's telling us that not everybody is designed to get through. So the same thing should be true in medicine. So if you're not willing to help your own game, then why should I sacrifice my time and energy if you don't want to do it? So I'm okay. We'll shake, we'll agree to disagree, and see you later.
Right, exactly. Ultimately, it's got to come from within. And if you really want to be a 1%er, that's up to you. That's great stuff. Any other places you want me to send people? Website?
No, my book on a lot of the basics is on Amazon. It's called the Epipaleo RX. It doesn't have a lot of the newer stuff on the quantum stuff, because people have got interested. I never thought people would be interested in the back of how all this stuff works. But I think if you just read 1 or 2 of my blogs, your head will be exploded. You'll be like, there's way more science to this guy than I ever thought. And I'm not that detailed guy. You may not catch that from this podcast, but I promise you, all you'll have to do is read 1 or 2 blogs and you'll go, hard stop. I've never heard this stuff from anybody else. And look, there's a bunch of sites in the literature. Like, this guy's given us books that have bibliographies out the wazoo. Why doesn't any of my other doctors know this? There's a reason why. The medical schools aren't teaching, because they don't need you to get better. They need you to stay sick. Got it? That's how the system is built. It's built on sick care, not health care.
Makes a lot of sense. Jack, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Take care.
All right. I'll see you.
Bye-bye.